The Lions have shaken hands with history, winning the Test series in Melbourne after one of the greatest Lions games ever in front of a record crowd. I'm Adam Gaston, and with my hosts Dom Leach and Luke James, and this is episode 2 of season 3 of the Ruck and Roll Show. Well, boys, as we dissect the drama from Saturday, what's the overwhelming feeling about the second test? How did we feel it?
I
Go
mean,
first.
I sort of wanted Australia to win purely because we could have the third test drama, because I quite like that. And that was sort of my thing of like, oh, I don't want it just to be a 2-0 series and then the final game doesn't mean as much. I wanted it to be a real sort of Australia win, and then we can have so much atmosphere for the third test and the Lions win it in the third.
I was kind of going for the opposite. I wanted Farrell to kind of do the clean sweep because I think there's a lot of pressure on him for potentially the next test in 2029 when they go to New Zealand. Because personally, for me, I think he's still probably favourite to take control of that. So if he can be one of the first Lions coaches to do a 3-0 over, over a touring side, I think that kind of puts a statement on and puts him at the top of the pecking order for next time round, essentially.
Yeah, and in terms of the game, you speak about Farrell and the sort of how ruthless that he wants to be. They didn't start ruthless in this game. I mean, they took a long time to get into it. Australia came out fast. We sort of thought they might come out fast, and boy did they! Like, I mean, how great was the start there? I mean, we'll come on to a couple of the refereeing calls, which were a wee bit dubious throughout the game. But great start from Australia. How big in it? We sort of spoke about Skelton and Valentini and Parecki coming in. How big a difference did they make?
Massive.
Uh, yeah, they were there and they were up front and they were making success on the gain line. Skelton in particular, I think, had Australia won that game, was man of the match. He wasn't on for the full game. They were trying to protect him, but he was massive everywhere, and he got in the Lions' heads. They won the psychological
That little hit
battle, I
on
think.
Tag Furlong,
It was
fired up quite a
perfect.
people.
But yeah, it was perfect. They wanted to get into the Lions' faces because they couldn't do it last week, and they showed that they could this week. And I think the Lions weren't ready for that sort of challenge at the start. They did pick themselves up, as we know, but I thought Australia really were firing on all cylinders, and it showed what they have the potential to be as they're a recovering rugby nation.
Yeah. What did you think, Dom, about the sort of the physicality in the first half and just the sort of the way they took the game to the Lions?
I think I think those bring-ins like you said, like Skelton and Valentini. Um no, Valentini played the first test, didn't he?
Valentini
No,
was maybe
Valentini
for
didn't
like
play the
a couple
first
of
test. He
weeks.
was injured.
Okay.
He
Yeah.
was injured.
Yeah, I think the bring-ins of Skelton and Valentini definitely increased Australia's physicality, and that's what they wanted to do in the first test. But when you're missing two key players like that, especially in your forwards, you, you're going to
Mm.
struggle to bring the expected levels of physicality that they wanted. But I mean, that first half from Australia was almost inch perfect. Everything was running smoothly. I think the letdown was that they just made their substitutions far too early, whereas Andy
Mm.
Farrell, waited for the players who came on for Australia to kind of settle in, and then brought his reinforcements. Who, for a Lions squad, when you bring in on reinforcements off the bench, they're always going to make an impact. Um, so I
Was that
think that
more
kind
of
of temp.
a lack of depth from Australia? Because I think they sort of probably had to take. Like, I think Skelton, as you say, look, he wasn't really fit enough to go the whole
Mm.
way. And Valentini, I mean, you've seen he's not starting this week, so perhaps they had to sort of give them 50 minutes and just like give them a big hit out, and then sort of make the changes. Do you think that was sort of a factor? Or...
Yeah, I think it is 100%. And hopefully this weekend they're able to play the full 80, coming back into it fitter, showing that what they got. But the problem is that they needed their replacements to be able to do the job and cross the line. And obviously, certain things happened in the game where the Lions were excellent and just shut them down. But I also think that there were elements in the game that the Wallabies will feel a bit hard done by about.
Yeah, and we'll move into that. So obviously, Wallabies took the 6-0 lead. I mean, Lina and Gordon were looking much better. I think they were just looking much slicker across the field, and you could see that. I think the halfbacks had a great game. So they took a 6-0 lead, and then you sort of come to that first controversial call where Dan Shane dives over. Look, you have some rather strong thoughts about this, don't you?
I
About
did.
this diving to score.
I mean, the first time I saw it, I thought, "Oh, that's clever. I quite like that." And then as soon as I was trying to be as neutral as I could when I
That's
was
the natural
looking
South
into it.
African in you, sort of trying to see where
N-
you can
No, well, yes,
find
see where else you can apply it,
gaps in the gaps in the rule
but
book.
but the thing is that for me, it is reckless and dangerous. And when I looked into it, I did some research, I did some digging, and it does turn out that a try similar to that, the Johnny May one against Italy, I think it was 2021 or 2019 around then, when he dived
Yeah, it
into the
was during
corner, but
COVID.
he dived over a player in order to score. And World Rugby said that that's illegal. You can't. They didn't say that it's because it's in the corner. It said it's because he dived over a player, over a tackler, which is the dangerous element. Now, to me, I'm all dive for the line all you want, but diving over a player is dangerous and reckless and does put other players in harm's way in an unnecessary manner. So for me, I would have disallowed the try and give it a penalty to Australia
Well,
because he's dived over a tackler. It's the same
on
thing like the Blair Murray try against Scotland. He jumped over a tackler. Not just, I don't care that he went onto the line, because yes, you can dive for the line, but to me, you're jumping over a player and putting them in unnecessary danger.
But when you say, I mean, we can speak about the Johnny May one, but I guess that was a couple of years ago. It's a good example. We personally disagreed on whether that not being a try. You thought it shouldn't have been a try. I thought it definitely should have been a try in that game. But the Dan Shane one, do you not think that the act of you see players diving to score all the time? Do you not think that's allowed? Because do
No,
you
but the
think there would be
different,
perhaps a gap in
the,
the rules where
but
that
the different, but the
game?
actually Johnny May case set a precedent that it should be illegal. So we got to use it as an example. To me,
Yeah, the
I'm
law.
all good with diving in the act of scoring, but when you dive over a player, it's just not safe and it's not right. It should not be allowed, and it should have been a disallowed try. Personally, I don't think PRD is good enough for the Lions series, but anyway, I always said, I think I said to you myself, I think they've messed up who they've appointed as the referees for this. Well, for the second test, because that's possibly the decider of the series.
What was the decider?
And
Yeah.
I think that I always said PRD, he's a wonderful ref, but I don't think he was good enough for the pressure of the line test. And I think that try should not have stood and it should have been a penalty to Australia. And we can't say, I mean, the Lions were far from perfect when it came to discipline as well. They
Yeah, there's a
conceded
lot of
three
penalty
tries in
stuff
a
this time.
10-minute yellow card period. And
Yeah.
I thought, I mean, to carry on with that sort of thing, Mario Toje's leadership under that period was horrific.
I don't know. I think that's a little bit
No,
harsh in a way.
the way he talked to the referee, the way he talked to the Australian captain, it just wasn't the way I expected a Lions captain to act on the field. I've never seen other captains talk the way he was. He was talking down to the other players. He wasn't getting involved. He was shouting at the ref. That wasn't what I wanted to see. And I think it symbolised actually that sort of thing of the Lions were offside quite a lot. They were infringing, especially in that first half, and they got picked up for it at points. So that sort of arrogance to come through and the way Itoje acted, especially at the amazing Keenan try at the end, that sort of, which I guess we'll come on to later anyway, where he's sort of having a go at the Australian captain for a pretty legitimate concern over player welfare for seeing that what happened in that ruck.
I don't know.
No, it didn't seem right. For me, that's not good leadership. That is
I think he's
a
just
bit
making a
too,
point for his team, isn't he?
but you can do it
In that
in a way
pressure
where it's
moment.
not patronising. You see, look at one New Zealand when they've
But what was
scored and think,
patronising about it?
it's the way he's shouting, get out of the face. You lost, you lost, you lost. That to me, that is not right.
I don't. Well, I
To me,
didn't personally see that, but
that wasn't leadership that I would have expected
I
from a
think
Lions captain.
when you're referring to that first half, I think just in that 10-minute period, they were conceding penalties just back after back, and perhaps the occasion and perhaps they just lost their heads for a bit. But I thought the way they regains control that game with the Jones and Curry tries, and the way they sort of pushed on from there and went on to win the game, I think that was a sign of rather great leadership from Maro Itoje, in my
I've
opinion,
actually,
and
oh,
great like sort of like
I've person
determination from the Lions because they haven't been put in that position before on this
actually I
series.
thought the Lions did it without. It felt to me, it felt actually, and I know you're going to disagree with me with this. Actually, it looks like the other leaders within the Lions stood up. Personally, when I reviewed the
Like
game, I watched it again. So the likes of Keenan Russell in particular had possibly one of the best games I've seen him play. He always steps up in that Lions jersey. To me, Russell was the leading player on that field. He was making the tactical calls. His kicking was excellent. Itoje didn't have a great game. I've watched the game a couple of times now, and every time I've seen it, he didn't look good on the field, and he
He got
didn't
man
look
of the
good.
match.
I don't think he deserved it. When I
Oh,
when I watched this
I
game
think
play,
tempers were
Russell
definitely
deserved
flaring.
Russell deserved man of the match for that display. That kicking display in particular was incredible. I again, my controversial opinion is I don't think Itoje is a great player, but I don't think he should have been the captain on the day. I think it gets to his head a little bit.
that is a very bold call, Dom.
It is a
What are
Yeah,
you
bold,
gonna say there?
it is a bold call, but personally, I think for the Lions captaincy, it's got to be someone who doesn't lose their cool because the Lions are an advert for the game and what it can be at its best. And shouting and screaming at at the other team captain and at the ref at the end of the match after you've just scored the winning try, when the other team's just gone to the ref politely. Was it Harry Wilson, the captain for Australia?
Yeah.
He went over to the ref, very polite, very decent. Sir, can we just have a look at this? Our player's gone down with a head on head. And all of a sudden you're running over to the ref, screaming, shouting, you lost, you lost, you lost. That's just not rugby. To me, that's something you see in football, and that's what disappointed me the most.
What do you think, Dom? What are your thoughts on what Luke said?
No offense, like I kind of completely disagree. I think obviously tempers were flaring in the first half. Will Skelton was getting into the heads of into the Lions players. Um, you know, that kind of whole 20 minute that 20-minute mark where, the Lions were kind of camped in the 22 of Australia. Everybody was kind of getting each other. So Itoje, I think he did a good job at kind of controlling players and not letting it boil over. Obviously, it did. It ended up with Tommy Freeman getting sin binned. But I think, you know, if you're if you're I kind of see it that if you're going to lead a team, you kind of got to give a bit of fight and a bit of dog, show a bit of dog as well. And so I think Itoje was well within his rights to kind of, lead and show that he was unhappy on behalf of the team because clearly they were all disappointed with the way the decisions were going and whatnot. But I think at the end of the game, yeah, I know what you're referring to when, Harry Wilson went over to the ref and Itoje was like, no, back away. You know, the points have been scored. And, the ref did kind of issue Itoje away and say,
Yeah.
I'll speak to him myself. But I don't think you can base those few actions against Itoje and say he was terrible. He shouldn't have been the captain on the day because he has displayed in so many instances why he should have been captain and why he is such a good leader. Um,
I,
and
I
so I
know,
think, and I think as well, looking at the statistics as well from the game, Itoje was just everywhere, causing trouble, doing his job, and I don't think you can criticise a player for doing that.
no, I agree. He's a great player. At the end of the day, he's a great player. But personally, I wanted to see and this may be a bit of bias out of here, sort of back to forward thing, but I think captain wise, I would have liked to have seen someone different take on the captaincy for the second test, considering the moment. I thought
But
Russell, I would have
surely,
loved to
if
have
he's been
seen.
given the captaincy for the whole series, it doesn't really make sense to. And he's
No.
won.
I
They've
know,
won
but
the
I
first
just
test
felt,
comfortably. Surely, it
I know,
doesn't
and the
really make
first
sense to
test,
do that.
I know, but for me, in the second test, when I rewatched the game, I saw a Toji had game. I know I've been reading all the Northern Hemisphere reviews because that's all I can find up here. A lot of stuff's geo restricted, unfortunately, and obviously the likes of Stephen Jones and Stuart Barnes write songs and praises without any, with a lot of lack of facts about what happened during the game. But to me, the Lions captain, I don't know. I always thought Russell had been done down as a figure and a leader on the pitch. Everything he does, sort of, he brought the Lions back into that game at points. His kicking game is what kept the Lions in the fight when they were down. And to me, that's why I think, again, he should have been man of the match and he should have been one of the key leadership figures. But I've always felt that actually coaches don't like to give Russell as much of a chance. It's always been a thing with Scotland. It's always been a thing on the last tour where he only came in on the third test because Gatland wanted to use, was it Sexton and Bigger when Russell was the
Oh,
standout
it
10?
was bigger in Farrell.
It was Bigger and Farrell, sorry,
Wasn't in the
yes.
squad.
No, Sexton wasn't in the squad.
Yeah.
But Russell was the one who stepped up in that third test and showed he should have played all three.
Well, I think Russell can have sometimes Russell, in the past more so than now, can have sort of games or moments where, you know, he can be a bit, I guess a bit prickly.
But,
He can do the
but
wrong thing, but
how long are we going to
he's
let that
definitely
run for?
he's grown out. He's definitely like he is like as a test match player. He's grown into a test match animal, really,
Yeah,
hasn't
but
he?
how long are we going to say the thing of, oh, well, years ago when he was a younger player, he made mistakes. So now when he's so
He's got
experienced,
he's got that experience of being sort of the co-captain with Roy George at Scotland, and he's sort of taken on that role. But I think when it comes within the Lions, I think Andy Farrell wanted someone who was on the pitch, like for the whole of the game, who was gonna
I mean,
lead by
Russell
example.
played the full
I
80,
mean,
if I'm not mistaken.
you look at who Andy Farrell's chosen as as captains in previous teams. You know, you got your Caelan Doris, um, and your Johnny Sextons. It's someone that he wants to lead by example. He wants one of the best performers on the pitch, the one that probably makes one of the most impacts on the pitch, even if the impact that Maro Itoje makes isn't the same impact that, or doesn't look as good as what Finn Russell makes. He still makes that huge impact on the game by just the sheer amount of work that he gets through. I think the fact that he is that sort of player is why Andy Farrell fancies him so much as that captain and that leader figure. And I think he's done
Okay.
fantastic in these first two tests. I personally disagree as well. Like I think he was great in that game. Um, but moving on to that sort of, you got the second half was a lot more like, I guess, like a tight test match than the first half was, where it was sort of a bit back and forth. I mean, it was full entertainment value. Don't get me wrong, but how did you what did you make of what do you think was the key aspect of the Lions sort of getting themselves back into that game? We'll go for
Uh,
Dom first.
Um, I think probably, going in at half time, 23-17 down, I think it's like, come on, boys, wake up. Because, 12 of those points came in the last 10, or even probably the last five. And so that was kind of, you know, the turning point for them on the pitch. And again, I'd probably put that down to Patoje's captaincy. Don't have to say anything, Luke, don't worry. Um,
It's going to be a
but
key talking point of this podcast.
yeah, but I think I come back to the point that I mentioned earlier about substitutions. Australia made theirs way too early. Bringing off your two props at at half time is
yeah,
a
I
really
agree.
bizarre choice. I think if you're going to let you've got them inside to refuel to re-energize. So then you say to them, right, give me 5, give me 10 minutes, just empty the tank, um, and then I'll take you off. But to bring them off straight away was a bit of a bizarre choice. I know that we're kind of getting beaten at the scrums, and we were talking before this, Luke, that Andrew Porter's scrummaging is questionable at best. Um, but I see the reasoning as to why Porter started over Genge, because Genge kind of gives that impact, and you know it, he proved when he came on that he is just an unbelievable ball carrier as well. I would have quite liked to see Schumann in this final test starting,
Uh,
but I think it was substitutions that came down that made the Lions kind of come out fighting, all guns blazing in the second half. But as well, I think if you're looking at from an Australian point of view, 3 points in the second half is terrible. Like that shouldn't be happening. If you should be making a lot more of a dent than that.
No, I
I think they
completely agree
needed
with
to
you,
run
Dom.
out of that energy, didn't they? Like I think they did
Well,
put a
there
couple
were
of shots
moments of
in.
magic. What was that line break where Sua'ali'i made
It
that
was
break and Curry's
it was Johnson again
fantastic
and
tackle?
McWright. Yeah, McWright made that. I think that was a key. That was a key
McBride
event.
made
If
Yeah.
McBride
if
made the
they
initial
scored
break,
there,
so but
yeah,
I think that was but Sua'ali'i had the ball when he got tackled by Curry, and I thought that showed Australia still have the dog in them to fight.
I
And
think
I
Gleason
think
and
they
Zano coming on were very good in the back row.
yes,
They
they
were.
were.
Yeah.
And there was potential for Australia to push further. They made mistakes. The Lions shut them down. Once the Lions' discipline got better, I do think that there were points where the Lions made game line success in the scrum in particular. That was the thing that annoyed me. Dom, I think you agree with me about Andrew Porter's performance in the scrum. I don't even know why the refs don't ping him
Yeah.
when you're setting, and I've always said this on this podcast, and I always wind up Adam by saying this, but whether he's playing for Leinster or Ireland or now the Lions, he sets at an angle, which means he's almost impossible to counter. So
Yeah.
you're gonna, as the Lions, if he doesn't get pinged, you're always gonna win a penalty off of that. It's not legal scrummaging, and when he did scrum legally against other teams in previous games, he's been absolutely hammered, and I don't think that that's Lions worthy. If you can't scrum legally, and that's what helps you win a game, it kind of upsets me because I think that
Porter didn't have his
it's not
best
in the
game.
spirit of rugby. It's not in the spirit of rugby to have a player on the field who can't do his job without breaking the laws.
I think another point
Yeah.
for the Australia, obviously Harry Potter went down injured, and they brought McDermott on
That
in
was tough.
early doors. But why bring McDermott on? Why not bring Donaldson? Donaldson didn't even get onto the pitch, so why wouldn't you put him on and then rejig your back line and put people who are more familiar in certain positions than kind of just sticking on a nine and saying, "Oh, you just have to put a wing, shift in at wing for 60 minutes."
But
I
McWright,
think
not so, but surely he can play at wing.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
probably, but
I don't know if he
when
wanted to not disrupt the sort of flow of the 9-10 because I think Gordon and Lino were actually showing a lot in that first half, which made him sort of think, right,
Liner had a great
I'll bring
game.
McDermott on the wing here, and he has a bit of pace, and he made like a really really nice carry. I think he bumped off a couple of defenders, which was a bit of a
McDermott
shock to
wasn't
me
bad
watching,
on the
but
wing. I think it shows the flaws in the 6-2, where if you do get an injury, you have to have players that can step up,
that
and
was
that's something
fundamentally the problem.
that that's something that's interesting to see, and it's because obviously you get a lot of people saying about the 6-2, oh, teams do it and they win. It's like actually no, this is proven that the 6-2 can have a risk attached to it. It's just about teams having good S&C so that you do have a side that's able to take on and deal with these challenges.
Well, you probably could have moved. You probably could have brought. If you're talking about that, Dom, you probably could have brought Donaldson on at 10 and then moved Line out to fullback because Line has been covering the backfield, indeed in this
yeah,
game as he has in previous games, and then just move Tom Wright out to the wing. You probably could have done that, and then that would have been people probably more in their natural positions. But I
yeah,
don't know.
and that
Maybe
was the
just
point I was
didn't
getting
want to
at.
disrupt the flow of the game, or I don't know what
But I
sort
don't.
of strategy
I
he
think
had there.
20 minutes in, you haven't really got much flow of a game anyway. So kind of
I mean, it did work though
it,
because they went on to score 3 tries.
three tries when you're a player down, when the opposition's a player down, though.
But
That's
still, but in modern rugby, even with the defense, that's still against top flight teams. And the thing that's really been interesting, if I may move this on a little bit, is we're talking about the Lions here. Like, as you say, Adam, you think it's one of the greatest Lions tests ever. When we look into this,
Well,
this
I
is
would say
this is
that
this
was
is
just a that was
this
a
is this
question
is
I was putting out there for
oh,
you
well,
there, but
this is a full strength Lions team from the best of Britain and Ireland against a developing Wallaby side. To me, I would love to see how this Lions side would do against the likes of New Zealand.
yeah, but we know that
Because at this level, that would be incredible to see. And I've always said we should have a Southern Hemisphere versus Northern Hemisphere Lions versus Sanzar type deal because I think it would be an incredible show. They
that would
did it
be
once in 2000. Well, they did it once in 2005 and never again because the score was a bit humiliating for one hemisphere.
when I'm talking about that, look, when I say it's one of the best test matches the Lions have ever had, I think in terms of the entertainment value and the
Yeah.
pure drama in it. You had controversial calls. We'll come on. Well, actually, that's a great segue onto the sort of the last 20 of the game. You have the Lions going through phases, getting that scrum dominance. Then they score in the corner. Tag burn, excellent carry in the corner. I don't know how
Oh
he
yeah.
doesn't get brought into touch. And they set up the grandstand finish. There's 2 points in it. And then it comes to that line out with a couple of minutes to go on the halfway line, and you think this is going to be a tough ask for the Lions, but they just go through the phases, and then eventually it comes out to Hugo Keenan and he scores. And
It was an
the
incredible score.
pandemonium in that stadium um, was absolutely huge. And then it goes to the TMO, and this is our next sort of point of discussion. The clear out on Tizano, the replacement flanker for the Wallabies from Wales's very own Jack Morgan. Should that have been a penalty?
Dom, I'll
No,
let you take this first. All right.
no, I don't think it should have been a penalty. Both players are meeting at the same time. I think Tizano deserves an Oscar for that dive. Completely overreactive.
He's the same as Nick
Um,
White there, but
yeah, just kind of, giving it the whole theatrics. Absolutely, a top class acting. I think what kind of unsteadies Jack Morgan is that Ellis Genge is coming right behind him, so puts him off his feet. I think when you're, I think the way that the rugby has changed in the last few years is that there's not so much pressure on the tackler or who's making, you know what I mean in this
the
instance, the
Jackler,
tackler.
yeah.
Yeah, is that he's dropping your height. So Tizano in that position, he's his head is below his hips, so that means that he's putting himself in a place of danger. Jack Morgan's he's at a low height, and he's not as deep down as Tizano was. So I think he's not gone for his head, he's gone for his shoulder, and it's just the way that the clear out's gone that he's kind of gone. He hasn't gone up and under him. He's kind of gone through him, and that's but rugby is a physical
It's a
game.
game.
Like if you get rid of that, like what's the point in kind of playing rugby at all? That's kind of what the formation and the building blocks of rugby is that it's a physical game. So I think if you're kind of looking at that and going, oh well, that's a bit of foul play because he's in whatever kind of danger, then the game's gone because I can't see any instance where where that can't like it can't happen. And if you're gonna change the laws that dramatically, then where is rugby?
No, I mean, Dom, I completely agree that rugby needs to stay physical. And for me, when I put my ref hat on to review that, I sort of I sat there and I went through it in my mind. And to me, it was a 50-50 call. But when Piatti said they were over at the same time, I thought they didn't. Tizano had already got over the ball, and that means that it is.
But
But
wasn't
he
He
his
hadn't
had
hands in the
he
ball?
hadn't formed the ruck. He
the
hadn't
thing
formed the
is,
ruck.
Tizano was at the ruck at that point, and Morgan comes slightly later, but it's still later. It's not arriving at the same time. For me, there's a clear difference because Morgan is coming at speed. For me, it was a 50-50 call, could have gone either way. He does make contact with the neck, and I agree, his hips are bent, and it's dangerous. He's so low down. Tizano is so low down, but he's trying to make a steal. We see Jacklers going that low to make steals now in modern rugby, which is mental. But it often means that they then get cleared out on their back, which again isn't great, but that's their fault. For me, it was the pressure where it hits the neck and the head. And when I look at examples, because you say about Genge adding to Jack Morgan's weight as he pushes through, giving him momentum, it's completely accidental. I don't think it was an intentional attempt to harm Tizano, and Tizano's Oscar-worthy Academy Award should come through at the end of this year. But the but for me, we've seen incidents actually where a player has pushed another player through, and the player that's been pushed and then made contact with the head has been red carded. 2022, Peter Steph du Toit on Gaël Ficou in France I think it must have been like the 20th minute. We saw that happen. So there aren't. It's not an isolated incident. The way that I thought Piatti handled it, it felt like he was just too much under the pressure of it being that big a game. So I
But
don't
that's
think
why
it.
you have a fourth official, because
And
you've got
well, there
someone
were
who
five. There
hasn't
were
been running around for 80 minutes going, right,
well, there were
cool, calm,
five.
collected.
Well, there were five officials. There were two in the box. There was a French referee and Marius Jonker, which I thought was interesting to have five officials. But I also thought that they didn't. The TMO didn't talk as much. It was very much Piardi leading, asking for more angles, not really asking for input.
But that's the point. That's why you have a primary referee on the
Agreed.
field who
Field.
is there witnessing
Yeah.
it, and you have them just to kind of give you support. If they kind of talk through it, and I don't know what the regulations are when you're making a decision like that, but Piardi's the one on the pitch. He's the one
Yeah.
that's making the shots.
So,
If
so they've got to discuss it as a team and come to an agreed decision because the ARs can also chip in at that point and say, "Well, listen, let's look at it from this angle." And
yeah,
I thought they should have reviewed it for just a little bit longer and looked at it because I would have loved to have seen all the ARs because Nika Amshakeli and I thought Amshakeli and Ben O'Keefe weren't really brought into it. And for a call that big, usually you have all five, well, five in this case refs coming and talking about it for a couple of minutes and working out what's going on here because this was the deciding try. And this was massive for the game. No matter which way it had gone, it would have upset people. And I see the way the Australian public or press have gone about robberies, and then the way that actually writers in the United Kingdom, with like Stephen Jones, saying that the Lions were unharshly refereed by PRD in the first half. Saying that a lot of the penalties weren't actually penalties. We've seen a lot of bad press from either side. The thing that upset me is that we don't get the decider this weekend. That's the main thing. So that's just my sort of rugby sort of fan. Like I wanted a decider to be this huge thing at the end of the tour. Personally, if I didn't have TMO available, I would have let it slide. I wouldn't have really have seen that it was illegal. I would have just thought, mate, stop diving. With the TMO on my side, I think that's a really tough one, and I would have listened to my team and seen their angles.
I think you can go
And
one step. I think you can go one step back from the incident where Jack Morgan meets Tizano, where Tizano actually comes in from the side. So he hasn't come round the gate. He hasn't come through the legal position. So when you add that into the
okay,
equation, I think if Tizano had actually gone in
legally,
legally, then that problem wouldn't have been caused.
so the problem is then it's well, he's committed an offence, but if the referee then rules what Morgan did was foul play, that supersedes the in at the side.
I know that, yeah.
So that's where you
But
get the debate, and I think it's an interest. This is possibly one of the most like from a refereeing perspective, this is the most interesting call in the whole
Yeah,
series.
and I
But
pose this question to you both. Um, should I, in that situation, should Tizano be rewarded for getting there first, for putting himself in that position to get the ball, and then has been illegally hit, supposedly, on the back of the neck to the sort of the shoulder to the back of the neck to the head area? Should he be rewarded for that, and should players in the future be rewarded for getting there first, or should it be about sort of that's allowing that physicality in the game, or
so you're allowed to
promoting
clear
that
out.
more than rather than having sort of like a close, because really realistically Jack Morgan can't do anything else there. He can't do anything else. If he tries to go, I think I heard James Haskell speaking about it, how they used to do it is where they sort of have to go under the head and then drive up. Then obviously that was outlawed because obviously then it's going to be a head on head, isn't it? But how would you sort of call that when you sort of Jack Morgan? What can he realistically do there?
No, but we see that often with a lot of steals now. If we look at how well Mario Toja makes a steal or Tom Curry, where they get in that low position and they hold on to the ball, it's very, very hard to clear out. Malcolm Marks is another great example of a fetcher who can just get over it and get in that angle where it's impossible to clear them out. That is a part of rugby, and but we still see players trying to make the clear out. And the laws are very strong on how you can clear out a player. You can't come in with a swinging arm. You can't go for the head, you can't go for the neck. So there are elements of safety, and you are allowed to counter up, you are allowed to try and clear the attempted jackler, but you've got to do it within the laws of the game. And I think we aren't taking away if we do ping dangerous clear outs, but we've got to keep the physicality, but make it enough that we don't see players with huge head trauma. Because personally, with my childhood idol being taken out of the sport because of head trauma, I'm quite one for like let's not have players have their careers ruined because someone made a stupid decision. So and this is why I'm being very angry about World Rugby, sort of all their so-called player safety when they really don't care anymore. In a case like the Morgan one, I probably would have called it as fine, but there were other incidents that actually led to before that I think could have been, well, should have been ref differently anyway. So
I
in the
think if
Morgan
it's
case, I'd
anywhere
say
else
it
on
was.
the
I would have
pitch,
given it.
if it's
Anywhere else
anywhere
on the
else on the
pitch,
pitch,
it's
there's
a
not this
penalty.
debate. There's not this debate.
Anywhere else on
I
the
don't think
pitch
there is.
without that pressure, I actually think Morgan would have been pinged.
Do you think so?
I think because if it was in the midfield and maybe 40 minutes in, I think it would have been just a penalty, and they would have said reckless clear out because
But where
it's
else
it.
can you go though? Look, where like
That's the thing. That's
I
the
bet
thing. No, I completely agree,
look,
and that's the
I'm
thing with
50-50
rugby
like
now.
you are. I'm 50-50 like you are. Part of me thinks, well, Tizano's got into that excellent position. Jack Morgan's come in. He has hit him on the back of the neck and the sort of head. Like like Tizano should be rewarded for getting in that great position. But then was his hands on the ball is another question. You know, I'm not
So,
sure his hands were on the ball, so that's what swings
No.
me towards the other side, which
but
says
also you can't even if a player's hands aren't on the ball, you still can't make a dangerous clear out. For me, the thing is that nowadays, and we've seen this for a good few years, is players, fetchers in particular, the likes of Joaquin Smith, Rory Dodge from Scotland, that sort of, when they get over the ball, they get into a position now where they cannot be moved off of it. And that's one of the arts of stealing. And I think it's quite cool to see how players have developed their own techniques. Getting low is one of the main ones. It also means that you've got a lot higher chance of being croc rolled, which is not great, and being cleared out on the back, which must hurt like hell. But I guess those guys are massive anyway.
But croc
So
rolling's been outlawed anyway.
yes, but the problem is that when you are sort of so low, guys try and make the wrap and then they pull you over. And we
But
have,
that's but but
but
that's the
then
point is that it is
it is
now
out.
you can't do that now. But
You can't do that now. And I still think we need to allow the jackal. We need to keep it going. And the art of getting in and making that perfect jackal should still be there, even if players are getting low. It's just,
well, I think it's been proved, throughout rugby for the last 10 years or whatever, is that jackal you can clear out a jackal safely. You can do it,
yes.
and I think when you look at Jack Morgan and the way he cleared him out, he hasn't done anything illegal. He hasn't, he hasn't purposely gone for the. He hasn't made contact with the head. He's made contact with the shoulder. It's the way that Tizano's kind of sprung back. Yeah, it's probably like shocked him or whatever. Because if I was in that position, I'd probably be like, bloody hell, like the force of Jack Morgan, and then add Ellis Genge onto that.
It did hit his neck as
Been
well. He
not,
did hit the neck, so that's gonna,
it was the neck. I think I'm not sure it was quite the head, but it was certainly the sort of the
and
shoulder and the nod for the
the
neck.
neck is also counted in the laws. So that's where the debate really comes in. I I think we could talk about this forever because this is possibly the biggest call of the tour. It's the winning try. It's everything. And I don't like to slag referees. I often, especially Nika Amshakeli, Ben O'Keefe, I'm a big fan of theirs, the way they hold the game. I was just disappointed at the choice of Andrea Piardi because I just felt that and I always said there are so many better referees who could have taken his place. But also, a lot of the best referees in the world are English, so they can't referee a Lions store. Which makes it very difficult because I would have loved, Luke Pearce for one would be an incredible referee in that kind of occasion. I know also because he follows me on Twitter, but because I think he's the best referee in the world.
little name drop there.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's
I know. I think he's the best referee in the world, and it would have been incredible to see his take on it. Again, Matthew Carley, Cole Dixon, the likes of those. Andrew Brace would have been interesting to see. Angus Gardner, but I know he's Australian, so he can't referee. He would have been cool to see. There are a couple of up-and-coming French referees who might have done a bit differently. I just think Piardi, we've seen him at the level in the URC where he makes these mistakes, and I don't think he's good enough for the world stage.
Well, the decision was made, and the Lions have won the Test match with that Hugo
Yeah.
Keenan score in the last minutes. I posed that question, sort of class/statement at the start of the podcast, where I sort of said one of the greatest Lions games ever. Was it one of the greatest Lions games ever?
I think you mentioned earlier that from an entertainment value, 100%, it's got to be up there. Definitely top three, top five. Um, from showing off skills and ability, probably not. But I think now rugby is an entertainment sport. It used to be back in the day. It used to be a game that you get your mates together and you just kind of hammer each other out, 20v20. You just kind of go all guns blazing, not giving a rat's ass about who's getting hurt and whatever. Because, back in the day, a scrummage used to be you can have as many players as you want in that scrummage, all in a line, just kicking the ball, just absolutely nailing each other.
Canada's
But
10-man scrum.
yeah, that was how it was back in the day. But, the game has evolved. It's an entertainment value now, and that's great. And that's what people want. It's a spectator sport. And so, if you're looking and if you're going off purely that as spectator sport, it is up there as one of the most entertaining games the Lions have ever competed in because it had everything. It had yellow cards. It had, the biggest comeback that the Lions have ever had to overcome in history. It's, controversial decisions here, left, right, and centre. So I think it's got to be up there as incredible entertainment value. I don't know about you guys, but I was on the edge of my seat watching that game, just kind of not knowing which way it was going to go. I thought that, when two tries came along, I was like, we're in some trouble here. But once Curry kind of scored, I was like, okay, I've got no doubt that they're going to come back and secure this.
No, I think, Dom, you're completely right. As an entertainment factor, it's possibly it's the best Lions victory I've seen in years. I've been watching Lions rugby. I think out of nowhere, how they came back was incredible. For me, I'm just gonna when I put it into context and I take away the pure entertainment value, and I want to just put. I'm not saying I disagree. I just want to add a different point of view because I always think it's better to have a debate where we ask for different views on this, which is why I'm probably going to say a few controversial things just to spice it up a bit. But for me, the thing is
You
that
always do.
well, I do because I quite like hearing other people's debates and finding out really the root of the cause. And especially with rugby, we can't agree on everything. We've got to find different angles to look at this. And for me, this is a full strength, best of the British Isles team against a weakened Australia side that is still developing. And for
But that
that to be the
Australian side
scoreline,
brought a big performance from them,
they
and
they
let's not
did.
forget them
They
beat
did.
England
And no,
this
this is
year. They beat
incredible.
Wales very comfortably in Cardiff. They're
Well, everyone
managed by
beat
Joe
Wales
Schmidt,
very
who's one of the
comfortably in
best
Cardiff.
coaches of his generation in the last couple of years. You'd probably say in the
Joe
last
Schmidt
sort of
is an
10 years,
incredible coach.
15 years.
Joe Schmidt is an incredible coach. I think he's got a couple of Six Nations in his trophy, however many quarterfinals. But personally, I think just the fact I would love to see this Lions team up against a Southern Hemisphere combined side and just see, and not like the one that they did, the Australia New Zealand one, that was a bit of a scam because it wasn't really the likes of the Barretts and Cooper and that sort of level of players. I'd love to see a proper Lions versus Southern Hemisphere side and actually see where the Lions are. I know when it happened 20 years ago, it was 56-24. So to see it with a Southern Hemisphere win. So nowadays, let's actually see how good the Lions are against this sort of side.
I think it's kind of, I don't think you can put as much. I don't think you can put as much onus on this being like a weakened Australia team or like an up and coming Australia team because it was only last year that Australia beat England at Twickenham. And
Mm.
this is one of the best England teams that we've seen, not one of the best England teams, but it's definitely a very strong England team that we've seen in a long time. So I think to then kind of go, well, this is a really weakened Australia team and
I wouldn't
they
say they're
shouldn't
really
they
weak.
shouldn't be doing so as well as this, but they're proving that they can be, they should be up there, and they're still like an A class, rugby
No,
nation.
no, no, they are, and they're a tier one team. I'm not disputing that. And I said this is just me trying to throw a different viewpoint out here. I'm not saying it's not. It wasn't one of the most entertaining games I've ever watched. It was, um, but well, in terms of Lions. But I'm saying this is also an Australia team that got pumped. What was it, 35-10 by the Springboks? However badly they got beaten by the All Blacks. So let's, as well as the victories up north, we've got to take into context their losses down south. They had 66 points put on them last year in a single half by Argentina. Let's
So
not
where would you
forget.
put it, look, then, if you're obviously we're saying in terms of entertainment value, it's one of the best ever, of course it is. But if we're going for a pure test match, when you factor in the opposition, you factor in everything, you've got sort of games like the second test in 2009, everybody remembers that. There's pure
I remember that
physicality in
very
that
clearly.
game. You've got I suppose you would probably go the first test in 2013, second,
That
and probably the third test as well in New Zealand in 2017.
yeah.
Where certain, we'll just go to the professional era because I think none of us really remember anything before that. Where would you both rank that?
I put it around the first test from 2021. Intense, dogged fight. No, great game.
But surely
No,
surely the
from a perspective of what is going on with the level of the teams. Let's not forget COVID had wrecked South African rugby, and South Africa was on it was rebuilding. It's the same sort of standard of teams that the Lions are playing against, in my opinion. They're going up against a team that hasn't got much experience, because they haven't actually played together for a year. They're going up, and all of a sudden they've got to face the Lions. With this Wallaby team, they're rebuilding after an awful World Cup almost 2 years ago, now regrowing. Really awful year last year during the Rugby Championship. Good end of season tour, pushed Ireland to the limits, should have beaten Ireland. So there's signs of growth coming, and this Australia team is only going to get better over the next few years. But in terms of a Lions test match, when you put in that context of where this Australia team is compared to where they were in 2013, I think it does it down a little bit. It's not as good as 2009. It's not as good as 2013 because this was an Australia team that went on to go to a World Cup final, and it's not as good as 2017 when that was the best New Zealand team and possibly the best rugby team there has ever been, and that's who the Lions were facing and playing against. So that's the
where would
context
you
of putting.
where would you put it, Don? Just as we move on to the third test.
So, what was the question again?
Where do you move on? Where do you sort of where do you rank that Lions test in the scale?
I think I've said it before. On an entertainment value, it's definitely up there, top three, top five. Um, but in terms of ability and what's on show, I think it doesn't rank as highly as, like Luke says, against when they were in South Africa or New Zealand. And you can put that down a lot to the ability of Australia, like
No,
Luke,
I
you were
agree.
saying. But I don't think you can take anything away from the fact that, you know, the point of the Lions tour is that it's a put together team of players who don't usually play together. In fact, don't ever really play together. Um, Against a team who are always, play together, month in, month out, kind of dotted around, granted, but also away from home. So there's a lot of factors that weigh against a Lions team, and that's why the success rate for a Lions team winning is a lot lower than it probably would you'd expect to be if you kind of a newbie to the game. But I think what Andy Farrell is achieving with this squad is positive signs, and come 2029, I think when they face New Zealand, it will be such an interesting test series, and I really wouldn't be surprised if the Lions could go and do it again and win. Not going to
No,
say a 3-0
It's a
because
big call.
I don't think that's
no,
going to be possible at all. But I think a 2-1 is definitely
on the come.
in fact in either camp, 2-1 is definitely going to be the outcome. But which way, we don't know. 4 years is a long time away. What could happen to New Zealand rugby in that time? We don't know. Who's going to come through the ranks in that time? We don't know. But you know, basing it off what it is now, I think there are so many signs of positivity to take going into 4 years' time.
No, I
It's
completely
really
agree
good
with you,
that.
Dom.
Sorry, carry on. Look.
No, I completely agree with you, Dom. We don't know what's happening with New Zealand over the next 4 years. We've got another World Cup to come. And you see New Zealand under Scott Robertson. I think he's there for the long haul. So it'll be interesting to see how they develop. Lions, England are now trying to bring through some younger players, so we'll see what happens there. Ireland's player pathways. We'll see who they hire from Australia and New Zealand. Um, no, I'm joking. We'll see who comes through their ranks. I know that they've got a prop shortage at the moment, so that's something big that they need to solve if they want to keep competing. And when we look ahead to this Lions tour, this next Lions tour in 2029, I agree, it has to be a 2-1 because you're going to go up against one of the old greatest teams. I just can't see either side 3-0ing,
Yeah.
especially with how good Andy Farrell is.
We'll move on, as we still have a test series on. We'll move on to the third test preview. So we had big team news coming out this morning from both camps. The Lions team is as follows. Luke James's favourite player at loose head prop, Andrew Porter, Dan Shane and Tag Furlong making up the front row. Maro Itoje, Luke James's second favourite player, accompanied by James Ryan in the second row. And then
I don't mind Maro, I just thought.
yeah. The back row of Byrne,
I'm just
Curry
getting it
and
up.
Conan,
Oh,
which
shit.
has been superb. I think we'll all agree throughout this test series. Gibson Park and Russell at 9 and 10 keep their places. We've got Aki and Jones who also keep their places at the centre partnership. And then we just have one replacement in the back three with Kinghorn coming in for James Lowe, with Tommy Freeman and
Great call.
Hugo Keenan coming
James
in.
Lowe was invisible. Actually, I'm just thinking, I can't remember something he did last weekend.
Well, he set up Byrne for that try, didn't he?
Oh, he set up Burn for that try, but apart from that,
Just as I go through the replacements, there's a couple of interesting calls. We've got Kelleher, we've gone for a 6-2 look, which you'll be happy to see.
yes.
We've got Kelleher, we've got Genge, Stewart, Chesham, Morgan, Earl coming in as that sixth forward, and Mitchell and Owen Farrell keeping this place in for the third test, which Dom will be very happy about. For Australia, we have got, let's see, hold on, sorry, it's lost on me here. We have got James Slipper, who starts again, who makes, I think it must be 143 appearances for the Wallabies.
145 this is.
Absolutely humongous servant for them. He was superb last week. We've got Parecki and Tupu comes in for Alatoa. Frost and Skelton in the second row. Hooper coming in for Valentini, McWright and Wilson making up the back row. We've got Nick White coming in for his final appearance in a Wallabies jersey. That'll be a huge game for him. We've got Tom Lina at 10 who keeps his place. Ikitau Swali, he in centre partnership. And then one change in the back three with Peach coming in. He's the winger for the Western Force. He had a very good game at the start of the tour in Perth against the Lions, so he comes in for the injured Harry Potter, with Jorgensen and Wright making up the back three. Replacements are Pollard, Bell, Nungar, Williams, Gleeson, McDermott, Donaldson and Kellaway. So they go for a 5-3 split. Lads, what do you make of those teams and how they how they've both set up, given the injuries and selection options?
Well, I suddenly really hope Australia lose 60-0 because well, no, I'm joking. But let's hope Nick White doesn't do any more theatrics in his final game. I hope someone doesn't accidentally brush up against his moustache and he needs to go diving into the
It's
fifth
a
dimension.
fantastic moustache, look, to be
I
fair
know,
to him.
but do you remember that
Great
thing with?
moustache.
Do you remember the Faf de
Great
Klerk
moustache.
incident where Faf goes to slap the ball, catches his moustache, and goes diving over the line? That was awful. I just,
He's made
it was
an
worse than
penalty.
it was worse than Pisano's dive. That's how bad it was. If we're looking at the squad, the Lions squad, that's a strong Lions team. They're going for a final fight at the end. They want a 3-0 so bad, and I fully back them to do it.
What do you
But
make of that change at the wing with Kinghorn coming in for Low,
I
losing
think
that
it
sort of left?
adds a bit more to the game. Well, it adds a bit more to the game because I think Kinghorn's more tactical. Kinghorn he sees the game so much better, and he looks, and he'll also add a dynamic where him and Keenan can swap out depending on what shapes the Lions look to run. I'm looking at this as I could see Kinghorn and Keenan swapping over positioning depending on if the Lions are looking for a certain kicking battle or for a certain line break. That sort of utilization of having almost two fullbacks on the field at the same time will be interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Dom, what do you think, make of the two teams?
Um, I think I'll start with the Lions team. I think there's clearly a statement being made by Andy Farrell here, and that is we're going for the 3-0, like
Mm.
Luke says. We're closing this out. We're going to prove that because if that decision had gone the other, if he went for a weaker side and they'd lost, then the talking point and the come away from this test, this tour, would be that it was one decision that let them down. Whereas if they can see out a 3-0, then they've got absolutely no legs to stand on. The Lions deservedly won and claimed the tour. I think James Ryan coming into the second row is a great choice. When he came on, he was far better than Chesham. I think maybe the pressure and the magnitude of the game got to Chesham. He didn't have his best game, which is disappointing because I think he's very consistent and he's very good when he plays in the Prem. Um,
James Ryan's more like Joe McCarthy, isn't he? That sort, and then we sort of saw how good that worked in the first test. Maybe that's the
It,
reason
yeah,
why.
would you have dropped Chesham and actually brought Scott Cummings onto the bench?
no, I think Cummings been a weakness in the Lions this
Oh,
tour.
okay.
Really?
Okay, that's an interesting call because
Wow.
I think he's doing very good at tactical
I
around the
thought he was
lineouts
very
and
good
the
against the.
mauling.
Yeah, I thought he was getting
It,
very good against the First Nations,
I,
especially. I thought he was.
I think Cummins is a bit of an underrated player. He's so good within the line out and the mauling capabilities. His open field play might not be the most notable, but it's that sort of key job. I always say, sort of open play comes second. It's your first job that comes foremost when you're playing rugby. Like just props should be able to scrum, locks should be able to do the line up perfectly. I think Cummins actually is a bit shortchanged and should have had that chance to play this weekend.
What do you make
Yeah,
of the
I
back
think
line, John?
uh, look at the backs. Obviously Gibson, Bart, Russell, unbelievable. Aki Jones, no arguments there. I think Aki again, he's definitely losing his way as he gets older, which is sad
He
to
got
see because
caught
he's
out by Swali, didn't he, in that midfield?
yeah he just looked a bit off the pace. But when you're kind of struggling for centre replacements, it's the obvious choice. And then Freeman, Keenan, and Kinghorn. I think James Lowe definitely didn't deserve to have another run out. Um, he was kind of teetering on the edge, I think, when it came to the second test anyway. But I think that second test kind of solidified for Andy Farrell that he wasn't the option, he wasn't the best option. And I think with Kinghorn now, probably when they played against the Pacifica team, he really shone in that Kinghorn did. So I think it's the right choice to bring him in. And with that, you can kind of play about with the backfield. Interesting though that they've gone for a 6-2 rather than a 5-3, because I think it would have probably suited better if they'd gone for a 5-3 with Kinghorn and Keenan starting. But you know, you can kind. I can't. I'm trying to figure out how they kind of do it, who they take off, because obviously Gibson Park will come off for Mitchell probably in the death of the game, and Farrell he's going to come on for. I'm guessing Aki. So you're looking at
He came
Kinghorn,
on
Freeman, and
for he came on for Jones, I think, in the
he did
last
come on
game.
for
He
Jones, but
so
I
might do that
think
again.
he might do that, but I can't see why you take. Well, it all depends how the game's going, and I think the wiser choice would be to put Farrell on at 12 for Aki,
Mm.
and then keep Jones in the centre with him. But again, bench wise, you've got two really good back rowers with Morgan and Earl. I'm glad that Earl's kind of getting that chance to wear a test jersey. So I think Conan will probably come off, bring Earl on, kind of similar players. Conan just that little bit bigger, and I think he had an exceptional game against Australia in the second test. Obviously, Morgan, he speaks for himself.
No
And
Henry
the front
Pollock though.
rows,
No Henry
yeah,
Pollock.
good,
Good.
good.
Oh
Thank
really? Are
you,
you happy
Dom.
enough? Oh,
Dom,
I
I
was a bit
completely
disappointed
agree with you,
personally.
Dom. Dom, I completely agree with you. Everything you're saying, you're
Just
completely right about this.
it's the interest though. It's like you want that, you
No, you
want
don't
him.
want that.
You
You
do,
You
don't
don't
want
want
that. Not
that.
on this test.
He's
Not at
good
this
for the
level.
game like he is. I had to disagree. I think he's
I
good
think
I
for the game.
I
if I
mentioned.
may. A lot
I'm
of,
just going to make a point
yes,
first, if that's all
yeah,
right.
yeah. No, of course. Please go ahead. You're completely right in everything you're saying. By the way.
I think Pollock was only. My view is that Pollock was only chosen because he was kind of in the limelight coming into the tests, into the tour, and so it was a bit of a a PR stunt to kind of go, look, we've got this 20-year-old who's only made one cap for England. He's been exceptional this year in the Prem and in the in Europe. Let's get him into the squad. Let's put a brand to rugby. Fair enough, it's worked really well. The interest rates for rugby have rocketed, so it's been a great PR stunt. However, if you look at ability wise and players around him, and I think I made this point in one of my group chats with rugby mates, and I got told that Ben Youngs has actually said a similar thing. So I'm basically just as good as Ben Youngs, is what I'm hearing. But anyway, the point is
The
that
love of rugby were coming.
Guy Pepper is Henry Pollock before Henry Pollock. Guy Pepper is a far better player than Henry Pollock, but it was the fact that Pollock was kind of doing flashier things, was kind of, all these celebrations, kind of, all of that. He was just making a bigger name for himself, whereas Guy Pepper was just doing the dirty work and, you know, just kind of getting on with it, just but still being better. I don't know if either of you watched the European final with Bath versus the Premiership
Yeah,
final. Sorry,
Oh
Bath
yeah,
yeah. He
versus
was fantastic. Guy
Guy Pepper
Pepper.
got man of the match, and he was absolutely unbelievable. Am I getting the right Pepper here? It is Guy, not
yeah,
Max,
yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah.
he
It's
was
Guy
definitely
Pepper.
Guy Pepper. Yeah.
Yeah. I think in that game he had an unbelievable try disallowed. Like I think
Yeah.
he ran probably 10 meters with Adam Radwan, who's one of the bulkiest wingers you'd probably ever see. He just kept him at arm's length, just walked over the try line. Unfortunately, it was disallowed, like
He
I say.
almost
But
walked over the try line with him still attached.
yeah,
But I
like
mean, Dom, could I might also say Jack Willis?
I think Jack Willis was such a big omission as
But
well. Like
But
it's just the fact
if
that he
if
plays
I
in France.
may, with this Lions team, I completely agree with Dom because if we look at like Henry Pollock, just because he's doing well at one level doesn't mean he's ready for the Lions. Let's take Chlekani from the South African under 20 side. Just because he's done so well in the under 20s, won the World Under 20 Championship, done amazingly, does he then start for the Springboks against the All Blacks? No, because he's
if I
not
may
ready
speak up
yet.
for Mr. Pollock,
No.
if I may speak up for Mr. Pollock and provide that different viewpoint, that perhaps a
Oh yeah,
controversial
yeah.
viewpoint that Luke likes to
The
bring in.
wrong viewpoint though.
Oh well, I don't know. It's all subjective, isn't it? I think you're right, Dom, in terms of, I think to call it a PR stunt. Yeah, perhaps it was certainly has been good for PR. Don't get me wrong. Like having him in, having that storyline there. Oh, is he going to start the test? Is he going to come off the bench? And having his personality and I guess his energy sort of just does bring that. But I don't like. To be honest, I think the kid's got something. I think he brings something entirely different that any other back rower brings. Like anytime he comes on the pitch, there's an impact that he makes. He makes a line break. He does something. You've seen him in countless games, at high level European games such as against Munster and Leinster, where he's had these big moments. And my dad, he agrees with you. You guys, to be honest, he thinks he's very flashy and maybe doesn't do the grunt work like a Guy Pepper would do. But I don't know. I tend
Are you
to
saying that?
Defensively,
I
he's the
tend to look
weakest
at a
back
lot of what
rower
the
in
guy
the
does.
test.
Are you also saying that? Sorry, are you saying that there's no other
I'm not
back rower that comes
suggesting.
onto the pitch and
I'm
makes
not.
that sort of impact?
I'm
Are you
not
saying that there's
suggesting.
no other back rower that makes that level of impact coming
No,
on
I'm
off
not
the bench?
suggesting that. I'm suggesting he brings something different. I'm not suggesting he doesn't.
Because
Like
Quacker Smith,
other back rowers do bring similar impacts,
Quacker
but
Smith
he
makes
brings
more of an
something else.
impact,
He
but he's not
brings
a
speed.
he's not
Look, he
arrogant.
brings. Well, sometimes a bit of arrogance is good
Only if you win
when
matches.
when controlled within the right environment. And I think he does bring. I think he has added something to this tour. I think he's played very well when he has been given the opportunity. Does he deserve a Test match 23 jersey? Mate, perhaps not. Perhaps not. To be honest, I think there's a lot more. I mean, probably not. To be honest, there's been other flankers who are test proven. As you say, he's only made one cap for England, and that was against a very poor Wales side. But to say he's purely been brought in for a PR stunt, I think that does him down a little bit. I think he has definitely added something to the tour and to the squad.
Jack Willis would have added more.
But with the Lions, I think Jack Willis, on merits, I think he would have added, like on player merit, he would have added more than Henry Pollock because he is possibly one of the best flankers in the world right now. But I think Henry Pollock, when you have the other players that you have, like Van der Fleer, like Morgan, like Curry, like Byrne, you've got all these different profiles of players. To bring in someone like Pollock, who's going to bring that energy, he's going to bring it, and PR is a big thing for the Lions. It is a big thing. I think since 1997, I think living with the Pride, they've always had this sort of image. It only comes around every 4 years. Let's maximise the reach that we can have with this, and I think Henry Pollock has helped do that. But he's also a very good player, and I would just like to I would just like to say my piece and just sort of provide that point of view. I think he has been a good thing for this Lions tour, even if he doesn't deserve to be in the Test match squad. But
I mean, he hasn't now that the big games have started. He hasn't really been mentioned. I've only seen a few sort of pundits and the likes of Stephen Jones mention his name, but nothing from nothing
it's
from
his
the higher
energy as
quality level of
well.
analytics. So I
Maybe it's
think
his energy as well that he brings to the squad as well, which could
yeah,
be
but you
something.
can. But you said that. I mean, you said yourself. Itoje brings that energy, doesn't he? Why do we need another player that does that on the field anyway?
It's different personalities, though. I know you're
Yeah.
gunning for Itoje in a minute, but it's different
No, no,
personalities.
I'm
But
saying actually in this case, I'm praising Itoje and saying, well, as you guys said earlier, he brings that energy onto the field as a leadership figure. Why do we then need to bring on a 20-year-old
because
flanker who's not as good?
because like I say, it's different personalities. It's why do you make Mario Itoje captain ahead of Russell? Because he brings something
Yeah.
different. Russell's kind of that cool, calm, collected kind of player that he will just control your players, whereas Itoje is the one that will kind of ramp them up, kind of be like, right, these boys are actually turning us over, lads. We need to get our acts in gear and actually get things sorted. But I think Pollock being chosen at the start was an absolute farce. There's so many different talking points, but this is the point. It's picked because it's a talking point. And I think it goes back to the whole thing that it is a PR stunt. I think he's not. You look at so many other players that could have been picked ahead of him. Like, I think even Rory Darge could have been picked ahead of him. Um, but the fact is that, like, defensively, he is the worst back rower that there is on this tour. And there are so many other players who are better than him defensively and also offensively. So there is no arguments to say that he was deserving of that of being picked.
I mean, if we've slagged off Pollock maybe a little bit enough. I think what we should talk about is would we amend this Lions squad at all? And I would change it. I'd only change one player out of this Lions team. You all can guess who he is. Uh,
Absolutely.
I put Schumann in. He's been good enough for Scotland. He's been proven. He can scrum legally. He can bring the fight. Schumann should be playing a game this Lions tour, and I think he's been done down.
I think I get the reasoning as to why Schumann hasn't been picked because you look at the other front rowers that are being picked. You've got Sheehan, you've got Furlong, you've got Kelleher, all Irish. You've got Genge, you've got Stewart, both English. If you then chuck a Scottish player into that mix, he's got no one to kind of balance with. And I think when you look at when you look at the front five of the scrum, you've got no Scottish. In fact, you've got no other Scottish players in
In
the
the
pack.
pack.
So when you've got one solo player from one nation, it it kind of it does throw a spanner into the works a little bit.
It
But I
it
completely agree with you, Luke, that Schumann technically is a far better scrummager
He's
and a
had a
far
better
better
tour.
player
He's
than.
had a better tour
And
than
he's had
Porter.
a better tour than Porter.
Yeah.
But when you look at the players around him, you kind of want to go with cohesion than you do with ability.
I thought it might be to do with height or something because often if you look at like Thomas Dutoy can't scrum next to Malcolm Marks because there's too big of a height difference. When they set, it's misaligned. I thought that could be a reasoning, but it's not. And personally, I think I completely agree with you, Dom, about nationalities coming in. But these are the highest level of players. They should be able to blend in and come together over the time that the Lions have been training together. Schumann should be playing this final test because he has earned his place on that team and he just hasn't been given it. I think there are players like Van der Merwe should not be getting a Lions cap this tour. There are certain players I don't think deserve it, but Schumann is one who has been
This is going
so
to shock
so
you,
let
Luke.
down.
This is going to shock you. I actually agree with you. I actually agree. I think Porter had a relatively poor game against in the second test, and I think probably I would start Genge and probably bring Schumann off the bench. But Andy Farrell hasn't done that. Just a quick word on Australia before we move on to predictions. What do you make of the team? And obviously, Alatoa and Valentini have dropped out through injury. Do you think that sort of affects them? And when you sort of compare the Lions, I suppose have had a couple of days partying to Australia, who I guess have been like ramping up the training this week. How do you reckon the Australia team is looking heading into
I think the most notable thing for me is that they've gone for a 5-3 split. So they clearly realised that Harry Potter going down injured so early kind of ruined their game plan a little bit.
Mm.
And that's why I think they struggled a lot in the second half as well. So they've kind of gone to manage that a bit more, bringing in Kellaway. Um, but I think when you look at the rest of the squad, kind of Peach coming in, he's a proven standout player. Like you said, when he played for Western Force, he was very good. I think it's nice that they're giving Nick White his kind of final and due. I don't think you can't slate Gordon too much because he was brilliant in both tests. So I think it's just a case of, Nick White, he's a seasoned vet. He knows how to play. He knows how to get in the heads.
what does
And I
he
think
bring
he'll
that's
he'll be.
different to Gordon? Would you say, Dom? What do you think
Say
he?
that again.
What do you think is what does he bring that's different to Gordon that you think he could add to the Wallabies?
I think experience definitely. But I think also just like I was saying is that kind of that bite, that dog that
He's
just
in
kind
your
of get it.
face.
He's such a terrier in the fact that like he'll he'll make jibes, he'll get into Gibson Park's head, he'll kind of be chatting to the front rows, probably like saying a couple of words to them, and he's just a bit. I mean, you can bleep this out, but he's just a bit of a cunt. Um,
No,
and
no, no, I
so
completely agree.
he kind of just gives that it's that mental edge rather than like your ability so much. But you can't doubt his ability because he's proven it for so long. But yeah, I think it's just going to be that kind of like
He's that great
just
scrum half
that
who can
mental
buy
edge.
a penalty. He buys stuff
Mhm.
off the ref. He knows how to play the ref. He knows he'll probably spend time analysing. I think it's Amshakeli refereeing on
Yeah.
Saturday. He's going to look at where Amshakeli likes to give, where he doesn't like to give, especially with the new legislation around protecting the nines. And that's somewhere that he's going to look to exploit. He's going to push. And I think Amshakeli is very harsh on offside. That's something I've noticed over the years. Um, and it cost New Zealand in that game against Argentina where they lost, I think it was 24-17 in, I think it was Wellington. Great game. But one of the things is that Amishke was very harsh on the offside line and it crumbled New Zealand's defensive game plan. So something like that, Nick White is going to abuse as much as he can, and that's something that's going to get into the Lions. I agree with you completely, Dom. Nick White's going to say things. I reckon he's going to play on Gibson Park and saying, "Oh, why aren't you playing for the All Blacks? Why aren't you playing for the All Blacks?" That sort of thing. You know, you weren't good enough to make the All Blacks. That's the sort of thing. If I was Nick White and I wanted to get into a player's head, I'd say something like that because you want to. When you're that level of terror, you've got that fight. You want to mess with another player, get in their head, and the Wallabies are going to want so much revenge this weekend. We've talked a lot about the Lions winning that 3-0 to prove their point. This Wallabies side wants to prove that they've still got fight. And I think almost Andy Farrell's given them a platform to show, actually, we'll prove that we could have won this series as well had the decisions gone the other way. Let's show actually how good we are.
Where do you think they
Yeah.
win that third test? And
Skelton.
where do you think it comes from with the changes they brought in with last
It,
week's
it,
performance bearing in
it,
mind? Where do you think they
it,
win it?
it's Skelton stepping up now and showing his way as an enforcer figure. He's got to get up in front of Itoja. He's got to fight that way. But he's also got and acts as a bit of a leader. He's only got 33 caps. He should have 133. I think it's such a disappointment about the Wallabies scheme that they weren't allowed to pick him for years. It's a tragedy, actually, because he's so good. But it's also Tom Liner has to match Russell. I thought he did match Russell in the first half. I thought his kicking game was excellent, and he targeted James Lowe like we said he would. He knew exactly what to do. And I think that's possibly why Kingon's in the team now, because Liner worked out where Lowe was weak and managed to target that wing. We'll now have to see, can he do the same against Kingon and Freeman, who are much bigger wingers and much better under the high ball, which it'll be an interesting change to the kicking plan. I'm excited for Saturday.
Dom, same question. Where do you think the Wallabies can hurt the Lions?
Um, it's a good question.
They can't.
That's a good question. Let me think about this. Think about it deeply.
I genuinely I can't see a way that the Wallabies win this. I, and that's just my genuine opinion. I can't see where the weaknesses lie in the Lions with this squad. I think they got rid of the biggest weakness, which was, as you say, Luke, was James Lowe. Um, so I think Lina's going to have to really think about how he's going to play his kicking game because he's got three players who are all really good under the ball in that back three for the Lions. So I'd maybe say somewhere in the front row, but even then,
Amish
I
Katie's
don't
harsher
think
on
I
the
don't think they
scrum.
can.
Amish Katie's
Yeah,
hot.
maybe Porter will be more penalised more, a lot more. But even then, you've got Gench who's going to come on and sort that straight out. So
Um,
I really can't see a way that Australia can hit them hard enough that it'll send the Lions, teetering back and losing the test.
I mean, Dom, I've got a question for you because as a Lions fan, do you want to see Andrew Porter pinged more for the way he scrums?
To be honest, I don't really care too much. Um, I think he's not my nation. Um, you know, I don't know if you're looking at fairness of the game, then yeah, maybe, but he does it in the way that illegal but not illegal because it's all about hip positioning. If he's actually angling his hips in, then yeah, it's illegal. But it's the way that he has his hips square, but it's just that his shoulders and everything are that's the way that he's pushing. So it's very clever, but it's not the most orthodox way to do it. But that's the way that he's got to the top of his game is by kind of looking at those intricacies of the law and seeing how far you can actually go to mess with them. So yeah, do I want to see him pinged? No, because then it kind of detriments the game for the Lions. But do I want to see him in the team at all? No. So it's kind of like, it's one of those.
Yeah, no. Good answer. I think you're right there. I mean, I do want to see him pinged because I think I'm fed up with props getting away with that sort of scrummaging. I like to see a proper good contest in the scrum, and it sort of saddens me when you have that sort of illegal play over and over again. To me, it just cheapens it. It cheapens the occasion. Every time it's a scrum, it's a gladiatorial battle, which is why I love them so much. And I think it just cheapens it a little bit when you got one player who sort of ruins it.
Mm.
I mean, there's something
Yeah, fair
else.
enough.
Did you
Before we move,
notice the Lions changed when they were scrumming? Because there was something that Tom Curry did to get with England. They've noticed when he make the hit, if the scrum turned and he sort of hit into the other seven, a lot of flanks do it. It's just interesting. I didn't see the Lions doing it as much this game. It seems to be less of trying to get in their face now because they think they're already dominant. I don't know, from a scrummager's perspective, did you see any of that?
Not particularly, but I think it's one of those that if you kind of got the momentum going, is there much of a need to kind of put that extra hit in? Because referees now are it's either going to collapse and the ball will be there and he'll just say just use it, or he'll ping it. So I don't know. They're all smart enough to kind of know how to get the best out
Hmm.
of a referee or best out of a team, or get the better of a team, I should say. So I think. Yeah, that's kind of my two pence on it.
Yeah.
I don't really have too much to say. I've not got as much of a keen eye as to notice those kind of little things that you do, Luke. So
well, the scrum battle will be very interesting as it always is with the Lions and the Wallabies, and indeed Andrew Porter. Luke will be keeping a keen eye on that. Before we move on to our predictions, we have a couple of little stats for you. Just with the Lions winning 2-0 at the minute, looking for that clean sweep. This would be the first time since, if the Lions were to win, since 1974 for the Lions to go unbeaten on a test tour. Now, I'm not including, obviously, that Argentina game at the start because that's technically not on the tour. So the 1974 Lions, who were captained by Ballymena Academy alumni, and the great lion Willie John McBride. Ballymena Academy is my old school, by the way. Just thought I'd drop that in there. Luke was dropping in the little Luke Pierce follows me on Twitter. I thought I'd drop in my own sort of celebrity claim to fame. How much will Andy Farrell want to complete this job? How desperate will he want to complete this job and do the clean sweep? And another question on top of that is, where does that leave this Lions team in the history of the British and Irish Lions to win a series 3-0 in Australia? Where does that leave them?
They're still
Start with
not.
Luke.
I mean, they're not, and they're never going to be as great as the Invincibles. That 74 team is the stuff of legends. When you consider who they were playing, in what era, those guys were the greatest Lions team ever. There's no doubt in my mind. I know the standard of rugby was less, and the way the game was played was very different. But to me, the way that they took hold of that, it would almost be a shame to compare them to that level, because this Lions team has been amazing. Don't get me wrong; it has been possibly the strongest Lions team since 20. It's been it's been better than the 2021 side, but it's not been on the same level as that 1974 team. And I think it would be a shame to compare it and say, oh, well, is this on the same level?
But it has to be asked. Look,
No,
I
it does.
mean,
It's a
winning a
tough
series
question.
3-0 would be a mammoth achievement. How big do you think that would
No,
be for the
it's a
British and Irish
massive achievement
Lions?
in the way the game is. But as we said earlier, with this Australian side, is it as massive? Is it as massive an achievement actually as the drawn series against the All Blacks? To me, that's possibly one of the greatest series the Lions have done. 1997 as well. That series, winning against world champion South Africa, first line series of the professional era. When we're excluding, so the Tours, it's not had the same highest result. Maybe it's 2-1 or it's 1-1-1 case of 2017. But actually, when you consider the circumstances in which they were played, the stats don't tell the whole story. And
Dom?
I think it will go down as a memorable tour. I think that's all you can kind of take from it. Ability wise with the Lions, the quality that they have, yes, it will be up there as one of the best teams that they've had. Um, but I think I mean, we've spoken about this so much. It's a different Wallabies teams as to one that has faced the Lions years gone by. So I don't think it will go down as the greatest Wallabies team to go. Sorry, the greatest Lions team to ever play, but it will definitely be. It's a memorable tour. It's one that has had a bit of everything, kind of both politically and ability and gameplay wise. I think there's just so much that has gone on that it will. People will go, "Oh, do you remember that 2025 tour? Yeah, cracker." There's so many talking points that will come from it now, and there'll be so many talking points that will be spoken about for years to come. Um, but no, absolutely. That 1974 team, you had JPR Williams, JJ, oh, what's his name?
JJ Williams. Yeah,
Yes, yeah,
Gareth Edwards, Barry
Gareth Edwards,
John as well.
Ian
Phil
McGeechan,
Bennett.
Gareth Edwards, yeah. So all of those lot that that's you talk about early rugby memories, like that is Stonewall kind of like the ones that you go, yeah, what a squad that was. I mean, to win every game bar the final test, was incredible.
This
1997
was a
again, like Luke
draw, by the
says,
way. A dubious
it was a
draw as
draw.
well.
It was a
From
draw,
what I've
yeah.
been reading up
So
on.
yeah, so you know, I think yeah. To recap, memorable tour this one, but not the greatest.
I think it's been a really, yeah, I would tend to agree with both your points. It's not the greatest Lions tour when you consider the opposition. Um, you speak about 1997, the 2-0. I think Andy Farrell's got a chance in the professional era here to hammer home what the 97 team wasn't able to do. I think from what I've been hearing from Lawrence Delalio and Neil Back, who were on the Stick to Rugby podcast, and they were speaking about how they sort of all sort of gave up, or not gave up, but the test was done after the second test in South Africa all those years ago, and a lot of them just went on the lash, and
I mean, it was so
a
brutal as
couple
well.
of them didn't even play in that game. So I don't think Andy Farrell has obviously picked the team, and Andy Farrell will not allow that to be the case this time. I think we'll very much want that 3-0 victory. Of course, I'd say probably the bonuses from this tour was another point that Delali had brought up. Will probably be a bit bigger than it was back in 1997 when just professional rugby was beginning. But yeah, I think it's been a really nice Lions tour all the same. I think you've seen, I'm sure you saw the scenes at the end of the game where they all brought their deck chairs out to the middle of the stadium and sung that great song Rattling Bog, if you know it. Do you see that,
I
boys?
know the Rattling Bog.
Yeah, great song. What do you make of that, Luke?
I think it's good. It's good fun. The Lions tour is supposed to be about having fun on tour. And I do hope what they do this year is they go and have a drink in the sheds with the Wallabies. Something they didn't do in 2021, which was very disappointing.
Well, that's just COVID, I would
That
say.
was COVID,
That was
though, wasn't
COVID. No, it's sad that COVID limited what they could do.
Yeah.
I think we almost lost out on that tour, and they've got to, trying to make up on this one. So for them to then actually do that sort of thing, drink in the sheds, go back to that old school rugby values, would be quite nice to see. It'd be a good change from
I think as you have both sort of set it up, before we move on to our predictions now, moving on to the 2029 tour, winning a 3-0. I mean, Sir Ian McGeechan spoke about it in 2009 before the third test when they had already lost the series. You want a hand on that jersey to the next set of players, and you want to place it in the best possible way. And surely you'd say the best possible way is to go out there and just side through the Wallabies and win it 3-0. Moving on to your predictions, I'll start with Dom. What's your prediction for this third and final test?
As I said before, I think it'll be a Lions victory. And I'm going to say they will win by 8 points.
Okay, Luke?
I've been debating this in my mind the whole talk we've had today. Now I've looked at the squads, looked at the
You
referee.
weren't far off last week, and we did have a bit of a go at you for it, but you weren't far off last week. You said the Wallabies by a
And
couple of points. You weren't too
I
far
thought
off.
about saying Lions by 5 because I think it will be tight. I am just going to go Aussies by 2, just because in case it happens. Obviously I won't be there next week for you guys to have
He's
your,
rolling the dice.
I'm not going
Yeah.
to be here next week, so I don't really have to take accountability for it. But
Oh, I don't know. We might try and get you in on Sunday if we possibly can.
no, you can't even get me on Sunday.
We'll try our best to get you in on Saturday or
Oh,
Sunday. Maybe just even to send in a little video to get
yeah, maybe
your thoughts.
you might get a video from me or something, and I'll be very cocky if the Australians do win. Just for the sake of having a bit of balance on the podcast, and we don't have us all agreeing, I will say Australia by 2.
There you go. Well,
Okay. What
he's
about you,
rolled the
Mr.
dice.
Gaston?
He's rolled the dice on that one. I'm gonna go for the Lions. Um, The Lions by 5. I think it will be quite tight because I think the Aussies will be up for it. The Lions probably will have had a couple of days, as I think they generally do after the second test, where they've sort of relaxed a wee bit. So I think that maybe might come into it a wee bit, certainly at the start of the game, but I think the Lions will probably just do enough and win it 3-0, and Andy Farrell will have completed an absolutely mammoth achievement to if he does go on and win that series
I will
3-0.
say,
That's my prediction.
I will say, we do have to include the Argentina game in the series. We can't say they went unbeaten because that was still the
I don't.
Lions.
That's not on the tour though. I
No,
don't.
it is. I'm still
It's not
counting it.
though. The tour that was a home warm up game. The tour is the
I still
tour
think you got to
of
put it in as
Australia.
a bit of context, but
You could, but also
we'll see
doesn't
on
I will
doesn't
Sunday.
just point
doesn't
out,
make as good a headline look, does it? You know. Think of the
I
journalist
will,
there. You got to think of the headline.
I will point out that on the Wikipedia page they do include the Argentina game.
So, well, see, Dom
Well,
agree.
if you're going for that, then I have a couple of other stats. It'll be the first time since 1966 that the Lions have clean sweeped a team, which was Australia 2-0, but then they lost 4 times to New Zealand. or the first time they've clean swept a series since I believe it was Argentina in 1936, which was only one game.
So, well,
So I think that 1974 one's probably the best one to compare it to in terms of like I mean that was before the war,
well,
1936. So
boys, it's going to be a shame that I can't be there next week. I hope this weekend you enjoy the game. What I will say is, please debate, should the Lions play France?
that is the
I'd love to hear
question.
your
Yeah.
opinions. I will be listening on catch up in whatever, well, wherever I am.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I think you, Adam, you can work out my opinion on it.
Mm.
But I've just been seeing it in the
What,
news
no,
quite
what is your
lately.
opinion before we do go? What is your opinion on that?
No, don't. Lions are for Southern Hemisphere tests. France is for the Six Nations. France is amazing, but it's not a team the Lions play. If they expand it, it should be Southern Hemisphere. It should be proper touring. They should go down south because that's what makes the Lions special. It's a cross-continental thing,
Dom?
and that's what they should go in Argentina.
I might save my
Mm.
opinion for next week.
Okay,
I'll
right. No,
I'll
I
look
like that.
at.
I like that. Trail it off till next week. Right. Well, thank you very much, lads. Thanks to Luke and to Dom for all their thoughts and controversial opinions and predictions. That has been episode 2 of season 3 of the Ruck and Roll Show. We're very much looking forward to the third test. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye. Okay, that's all right. Just let it.
What an introduction.
Yeah, I was gonna make it a wee bit more wordy. I was gonna bring in like the last time. Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
It wasn't
Um,
really the greatest, one of the greatest Lions test games. Now, 2009, the
it
second
was one
test
of
was
the
one of the
greatest. Right,
greatest.
Oh,
we'll
wah,
get
wah,
in. We will
wah.
get into that. All right. Okay. Right.
You are
Um.
jumping the gun too much, Luke.
I'm just
Okay.
stirring for the love of the game.
Okay. Right. Back to professionalism or semi-professionalism.